5 on 20 News with Phyllis James, coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson. It is Monday, January 29th. First in local headlines. A group of Arizona state lawmakers are claiming that they were questioned about their ethnicity by Trump supporters at a protest outside the Capitol building last week. Democratic Representative Eric DeShini says that protesters asked him if he was in the country illegally, even though he is a Navajo. DeShini told the Arizona Capitol Times that I'm indigenous to these lands. My ancestors fought and died on these lands. Don't ask me that question. Democratic Representative Cesar Chavez also said he was asked that question. As a joke, Chavez told the women that he was an undocumented legislator, since he was brought to the U.S. from Mexico when he was a child. He says that the woman responded by saying, "You're illegal. Once illegal, always illegal." Democratic Senate Minority Leader Katie Hobbs also wrote a letter to the Arizona Senate President claiming that there was a lack of law enforcement on the scene. She says that Democratic staff was yelled at by protesters and that lawmakers did not feel safe. Trump supporters denied the charges, claiming that the group was made up of several white, black, and Latina Americans. One of the protesters called the accusations a disgusting, blatant lie. Arizona's opioid epidemic is growing faster among pregnant mothers and newborns, according to new data from the Arizona Department of Health Services. The report says that the number of infants born with opioid withdrawal symptoms have increased almost fivefold in 2016, with 73 cases per 10,000 births, up from 15 per 10,000 births. Last year, 790 Arizonans died of an opioid overdose, according to the report. One problem, according to the report, is that only 2 out of 5 women receive medication-assisted treatment, or MAT. During MAT, a patient takes a replacement drug, such as methadone, so they can wean themselves off the drug. There are also few options for those living in rural areas to receive MAT and other addiction recovery services, such as detox programs and therapy. The report showed that opioid addiction grew in the largely rural counties of Graham and Yavapai. That Arizona Health Department report is partly what prompted Governor Doug Ducey to sign into a law a plan to confront the opioid crisis. The plan provides $10 million for treatment, restricts timetables for opioid prescriptions. The plan also protects Good Samaritans, who people call for help if someone overdoses. The $10 million will go toward improving treatment access for uninsured and underinsured patients. Also under the plan, naloxone, an overdose reversal drug, will also be provided for local law enforcement and correction officers. The law includes a so-called 5-day rule, where initial prescriptions are only able to be filled for 5 days. It also limits the amount of morphine that can be given to patients in the first 5 days. Although there are exemptions for those suffering from burns and other serious injuries, those diagnosed with cancer, and those receiving hospice care. Tucson saw an almost $2 million surge in tourism from last month's Arizona Bowl, according to the Las Cruces Sun News. Tucson received more than 39,000 people in the city who attended the game between New Mexico State and Utah State, a record for the game. Tucson area hotels averaged an almost 68% occupancy rate from December 25th to December 31st, with game day swelling to an 87% occupancy rate. Overall, Tucson hotels and resorts generated a total of over $8 million for the week ending December 31st. The Navajo tribe is planning a second utility-scale solar energy farm in Kayenta, Arizona. The plant will produce about 27 megawatts of energy, or enough to power 18,000 homes when it starts operating next year. The Navajo Tribal Utility Authority is financing the $50 million project primarily through loans. Tribal officials say they'll sell the renewable energy credits to the Phoenix-based Salt River Project. Together with the Salt River Project, the Navajo signed an agreement on Friday to work toward generating 500 megawatts of solar energy in the next 5 to 10 years. Lobbying in Washington is at its highest level since 2010, with lobbyists spending $3.34 billion last year, according to a report by the Nonpartisan Center for Responsible Politics. The report shows how the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Realtors spent the most money to shape policy in 2017. Lobbying by individual companies also increased, according to the report, with Google spending $18 million last year, a new record for the tech industry. Congressional filings show that Google lobbied for a variety of issues, including cybersecurity, tax legislation, and immigration. The nonprofit Open Society Policy Center, run by liberal superfunder George Soros, spent over $16 million last year, a record for the organization. The National Association of Realtors spent over $22 million lobbying in favor of the recent tax reform bill signed into law last month. The group successfully lobbied to stop a provision that would have limited the mortgage interest deduction to those with homes worth $500,000 and less. The final law increased the cap to $750,000. Another company spending big was Whitefish Energy, a tiny energy company that was offered a contract to repair Puerto Rico's power grid. The company spent $150,000 on lobbying after the deal began to draw scrutiny from lawmakers. Lobbyists traveled to Washington after revelations emerged that the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, or PREPA, gave the company a $300 million contract to rebuild transmission lines on the island. This was despite the company having little experience doing such work. Lawmakers pointed out that the company was based in the hometown of Interior Secretary Ryan Zink and raised further questions about Zink's relationship to Whitefish. The U.S.-based solar energy company SunPower announced that it's putting on hold a $20 million plan to expand factories and create hundreds of new jobs in the U.S. They said the plan would be put on hold until they receive a guarantee that it would get an exclusion from the new solar technology tariff announced last week. The president announced that he would charge a 30% tariff on imported solar technologies. SunPower said that the tariff would hurt the solar industry's bottom line and result in fewer jobs. 80% of the materials used to construct solar panels in the U.S. comes from abroad, from such countries as China. As a result, the $28 billion solar industry could be hurt. In the case of SunPower, the majority of its solar technologies are manufactured in the Philippines and Mexico. The tariff goes into effect on February 7th, but the rules for requesting an exclusion won't be announced until February 22nd. Dutch spy agencies passed intelligence to the FBI about Russia interference in the 2016 election, according to the Dutch newspaper Volkskrant. The paper says that the Netherlands AIVD security service penetrated networks used by Russian hackers in 2014 and observed them breaking into networks used by the Democratic National Committee. The networks were hacked by the Russian espionage group known as Cozy Bear, which has been linked to Russian intelligence and perhaps even Moscow's Federal Security Service. The Dutch were able to spy on the hackers for up to 2.5 years, determining the location of their operations and getting the hackers on film. Both AIVD and the FBI declined to comment about the report, and Moscow has denied involvement. Just a bit over 21,000 refugees will be admitted to the U.S. this year, well under the 45,000 limit, according to the International Rescue Committee. Last September, the Trump administration lowered the cap on admitting refugees to 45,000 from the previous 75,000 over the last decade. This was also much lower than the limit under the Obama administration, which was 110,000 for 2017. The IRC said that only 21,000 292 refugees will be resettled in 2018, and the Syrian refugees will account for only 0.5% of this number, compared to 15% in 2017. This is despite Syria still being in the middle of a brutal civil war that's sending Syrians fleeing to safety in various countries across the world. Donald Trump campaigned on a promise to reduce refugee resettlement in the country, blaming refugees for terrorism-linked violence. Syria has been singled out as an offender, and many states, including Arizona, have tried to keep Syrian refugees from entering. David Miliband, the president of the IRC, said that Trump's determination to squeeze the life out of the refugees resettlement program will harm the lives and life chances of some of the most vulnerable people on the planet. This was 5 on 20 News with Phyllis James. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube account, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for all the latest Creative Tucson news and content. You can also feel free to get in touch with us at info@creativetucson.org. Thanks for watching, and stay creative, Tucson.